Hello. It's Rebecca. How are you? Thank you so much for stopping by today and for taking time out of your busy day to spend it with me. I do hope that this video gives you a lot of value and helps you in your journey and helps you have maybe some aha moments. I do have a lot to share and I have a lot to say. I think in this area of weight loss, and it's something that I've been researching and implementing for years, actually. Maybe you've kind of sort of done the same thing and kind of wondered, why haven't I mastered it yet? I think I had some of the same questions, but I really hope that as I spent the time putting together some photographs and some things that I found as challenges and how I overcame them and tips and tricks, that you will find value in those and that they will be things that you can implement and things that you go, oh, I didn't think of it that way, or oh, that really helps. That is really my goal today. And so without further ado, I guess let's dive into the presentation. So I've titled this video, How I Lost 90 Pounds and Kept It Off. And if during this presentation you begin to wonder, where is she looking all of this time? I have a big monitor over here on the right-hand side, and so I might occasionally look over to the monitor to stay on point. And because if I don't, as a researcher, I might tend to go down the rabbit hole. All right, let's get into it. All right, so I've already introduced myself. My name is Rebecca, and I am the owner of Vibrant Rebel. This presentation is for every woman who has struggled with her weight for years on end, just like I did. And it's for every woman who felt like she wasn't enough, not thin enough, not beautiful enough, not proud of who she was, and maybe not proud of who she is in this very moment. I struggled with my weight probably starting since about the age of 12. There are a lot of rabbit holes I can go down right now as to why it happened, how it got started, what it coincided with like during that time. But suffice it to say that I was slightly overweight as a sixth grader, and that's when I first became aware of my weight, when a little gal in the sixth grade pointed to my little tummy that kind of spilled over in my skirt and said, "Getting kind of chunky, ain't ya?" I remember it to this day. There are certain things in life that we do remember, and that was actually one of them. Needless to say, I developed a very dysfunctional relationship with food at a very young age, and went on to middle school and became really desperate to lose weight as I looked over the shoulders of the gals. You know, when you're riding the bus, did you ride a bus when you were a kid? I'm like 53, so we rode a bus to school when we were a kid, and the gals often brought these magazines that had these beautiful models, you know, the ones with the long blonde curly locks flowing over the shoulder. Maybe she had dark hair or something, I don't know. And all you know is that you look nothing like her. And all you know is that everyone is oohing and eyeing over the photographs, and you're thinking, wouldn't it be nice if I looked like that? Because, you know, maybe that's better than the way that I look now. It's interesting how those thoughts come into our minds at very young ages. I would say that that's pretty much when the dieting gangs began, you know, clipping out the diets from, you know, Cosmo. And I'm sure that those magazines were not meant for young gals at 13. I'm sure also that those gals in my grade probably shouldn't have had them. And I'm also sure that those diets were not meant for gals who were 13 years of age. So I'm just putting that out there. But I did follow a lot of them in an effort to diet down, in an effort to alleviate the desperation to lose weight. I did a lot of things. I ate 400 calories a day. I did the grapefruit diet. That was challenging because it was trying to get my mom to buy grapefruit. So she doesn't know that I actually withheld food for nearly 2 weeks. And if she ever watches this video, she's probably going to be shocked. But I did do that at one time because I thought, wow, if I could just withhold the food, then maybe I would actually lose some weight. This was me at about 13 or 14 years old. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, clearly. But after following the diets in the magazines, I didn't feel like I was necessarily losing some weight. I felt like sometimes my tummy was a little flatter, but I certainly was not mastering it. All I knew is that I really wanted to just look like everyone else. And if you're thinking, okay, in this photograph, it wasn't that bad. Here I was about maybe age 15. My sister was significantly thinner than I was. And so I was definitely the odd man out when it came to the sisterhood, because clearly I was overweight and already had the thighs. I was even heavier when I got to high school. I was very self-conscious of my body. I was very ashamed of my body. I was confident in some abilities that I had, like academics. I got really good grades. Math definitely was my nemesis, but I was insecure in other areas like sports. Like I hated PE. I wasn't bullied in school, but I did feel like the perpetual outsider. I did go to a private school, luckily, when I was in high school. But even, peer pressure even has an interesting way, even though I didn't feel like there was a lot of peer pressure. I think a lot of that is self-imposed in many ways. And I remember thinking, even though I was, the one that got the good grades and the brainy child, like in the classroom, there was always that tinge of thinking, wow, what would it be like to be the cheerleader? Or, the ones that there was the popular gals in school. I was, maybe popular for getting the good grades and maybe some of the perfect scores, but sometimes I really just didn't want to be popular for that. And I think that my weight overshadowed a lot of that, but because I discovered that I was really good in academics, that I just kind of like really ran with that and focused on that all the way through graduate school. It was the one thing that I could do was get good grades. So I just focused on that. I would say that in all of my dieting measures, none of it ever got better. Maybe I went up like a couple of pounds. I didn't get on the scale. I never really knew what I weighed, to be honest with you. I knew what size clothes I probably had, and they always said large and extra large and 18 and 20 and size 22, but I never knew how much I weighed when I was younger, and that was probably like a favor that my mom actually did for me. Was I don't remember actually seeing a scale ever in the house. Probably better that it was that way. But once I got to the University of Washington, I was obese. And then as I went on to grad school, clearly you can see in this photograph, I was overweight, obese, and the size of my hips and thighs had doubled. I didn't know then, but my body fat would be greater than 50%. Had a lot of mobility issues, twisted my ankle probably about 19 times. I injured my left knee. Every time I twisted my ankle would come down on that left knee and destroyed the cartilage in my left knee. You can see here that if you have never heard of lipedema, if you just look at my thighs here, you can see that I have lipedema in this photograph. And this was a before photograph from before when I went to the clinic. And if you're curious about lipedema and whether or not you have it, then that is definitely a good term for you to go and look up, because it is a very real thing. I didn't know until recently that this was something I had had since I was probably about 13 years of age, and it is progressive, and you need to know now if you have this or not. So anyway, I'll just leave that right there. I would say that it was 2014 that I went to go see an MD who suggested that I go see a nutritionist because, well, I was obese. And the irony in all of that, because I was thinking, clearly I've not figured this out. I've read about 30 to 35 books in my lifetime and have followed lots of diets, done all the things. I was not really understanding why. Why had I not mastered it? Why was I the person that could be in the gym at 5 a.m. following the latest diet book that I had read? The one that said that you could have bagels. I did that and I gained weight. I felt like I must have been the only person that actually could run 2 miles a day and gain weight. But Later, my diet would be mostly donuts, cakes, cookies, brownies. Cheesecake was my favorite. Any kind of fast food, dining out, anything and everything in a box or a bag. It didn't really matter. And I became even more desperate as I became even more immobile, puffing and puffing up the back stairs in the hospital, doing, my internship there. And I thought, wow, something's really got to give here because this is embarrassing. I don't feel well. I was depressed. And I thought, okay, well, maybe surgery could be an answer. I had never considered it in my life, but I had been to a surgical conference where they discussed the sleeve. And I thought, that's it. That's what I need. I need the sleeve because I need something that will compress my stomach down to nothing, because clearly I have a problem with food. Clearly I am out of control. I cannot control myself, and I need something to augment the way that I'm eating because this is just not working. Those were the thoughts that I had then, and that was in 2014. When I called the insurance, they said, well, you have to go on a diet before you can get surgery. And I started laughing in my head, and I thought, seriously? Like, I've done diets. I've done probably 2 or 3 diets a year since I was 13 or 12. Why do I have to do another diet? This doesn't make any sense. Well, it had to be documented. So apparently you have to have paid for something, have a receipt, have proof, have gone somewhere for, I think it was like 90 days or something like that. And then that was like your ticket to, having insurance pay for it. Okay. When I went in to go see, I chose a clinic, a weight loss clinic. I went there, put down significant amount of money, and decided that I wasn't going to look back. My friend took this before photograph that you're looking at here, and sometimes it's painful to take photographs, but if you want to chronicle any kind of weight loss journey and look at a before picture, you must do it. You must do it. But back to the clinic. When I was at the clinic, my prescription diet was a PSMF, or a protein sparing modified fast, which is about 400 to 500 calories a day until I reached my goal weight. And I thought, this seems very low. I mean, I had read Tom Venuto's book, Burn the Fat, Feed the Muscle, and all I knew was that just didn't sound right. But I was still on board, and I wasn't totally on board until I reached my goal weight, because that just seemed like extremely low. But when they gave me the keto test strips to measure the urinary ketones, the only term I had ever heard of ketosis was associated with the diabetic ketoacidosis, which is not the same thing. And I kept thinking, I don't think that this sounds like something I should be doing, so I'm going to start looking it up. I was, a novice at reading a whole bunch of books, and so I thought, okay, well, I'm no stranger to research. Let's do this. When I found the terms ketosis and ketones in the Reddit forums, and I thought, this is interesting, because then that led me to the ketogenic diet, or I will often refer to it as a ketogenic way of eating. And that food sounded much more interesting, because a protein sparing modified fast, as you may know, is like basically 0 fat. Like, who wants to eat a diet with 0 fat and a couple servings of vegetables? I mean, it is not good. It is not tasty food. Very bland. And this is almost one of those things where you go, I don't know if it's a really good idea to start something that you can't continue for a long period of time. But I guess so long as you modify, as you reserve the idea in your head that you can modify like as needed, then maybe that's okay. That's where I started. So at some point, after reading enough, I was convinced that the ketogenic way of eating was for me. Not saying you should do it. All I'm saying is that it felt like it was for me. The food sounded delicious, like sour cream, cream cheese. Those are still processed foods the way I look at it today, but vastly better than my diet of donuts, brownies, and fast food. So baby steps, right? So with the protein sparing modified fast, I was hungry all the time, and I would go in with my colleagues with this paltry amount of food. And I admit it was almost laughable, like the quantity of food that I was actually eating. And they would look at me, and some of them were also overweight, and they would say, I could never do that. And I'm thinking, well, you go home with your bad self and your big plate of spaghetti, you know? I mean, because I'm not doing that now. But the ketogenic diet was something that I morphed into. I moved from the PSMF and I decided to go with the ketogenic diet. And then, like, the hunger went away. Like, I was never hungry. And I lost massive amounts of weight doing that. And I loved the range of food choices. And then from there, I just decided that I was never looking back, ever. And I would have to say that my weight loss strategies, the single most important thing I probably did for myself was just making a decision. I decided that I was going to go all in. It was almost like, because I looked into surgery and then signed up and dropped a lot of money on this clinic, whether or not I agree with their approach and their strategies, that I made the decision that it was going to be the last time I was going to be faced with the lifestyle that I had. It was going to be left in the wake. It was going to be left in the past. Even though I might remind myself of my why periodically in the future, this decision of these foods are no longer going to be part of my future. They're no longer going to be a part of who I am. And so that was one of the things that I feel like really made a big, impact on my weight loss journey. The other piece to it was I really stopped caring about what other people thought about my journey and what I was eating. I just really didn't. It was almost like, well, you do you, boo, because, if you want to continue on with the big plates of spaghetti, then, I'm not going to be mad at you. But, I wanted it. I wanted it so bad. And I feel like that might be a point that is also important. Was I wanted it so badly. It's not like I didn't want all of the other things, but it was a different kind of want. It was a different kind of desire. And that's what I felt like sort of made a difference too. Now, I chose to be responsible with my food intake. So not only was I in the forums and I was reading about everything, I learned that there was an app called MyFitnessPal, and I used it daily. I weighed my food using a food scale. I used a small plate because there's a psychological component to seeing your food on a small plate versus a gigantic plate where the food looks like it's a lot less. I use calorie calculators that you can find all over the web now, and they were on Reddit, and it was just calculating macros and doing the zigzag dieting and all of that. Down the rabbit hole for a second, anyone that believes that calories in, calories out doesn't work, don't kid yourself, it works. Now, you can get to a point if you have a lot of weight to lose, and the closer you get to your goal, your body, especially if you're a female, will resist it. But don't kid yourself into thinking that that doesn't work. I've heard other people, influential people, say that diets don't work. Yes, they do. I've also heard them say diets don't work because people can't do them. Okay, but that doesn't mean they don't work just because we can't do them. They do work. Try it and true. Okay? That doesn't mean that physiology doesn't come into play. It does. But mostly calories in, calories out. Your body will adjust at some point, but it does work. All right, back to my points. So in terms of accountability, I continued to show up to the clinic to weigh in weekly, even though I disagreed about the dieting strategy and all of that. And I had abandoned my protein sparing modified fast and went with the ketogenic way of eating. I decided that the point of accountability was really important. It was really important. And I loved all of my new food. So that was also a part of my strategy. I found interesting ways to make my food delicious on the ketogenic way of eating. I found new recipes that I never thought that I would incorporate. Some of it was just a little journey of finding like which kind of flaxseed that you would use or which kind of flax meal. And it does make a difference, which kind. And finding foods to replace things that I was already using and just getting to the point where I could convince my brain, this is good, this is healthy. And so if I was ditching the wheat, I had read this book called Grain Brain by Dr. Pearl Mutter. Shout out to Dr. Pearl Mutter. That book is so good. And so I decided to have a little experiment and see what would happen if I reincorporated some grains. I think it was about a year after I'd been on the ketogenic way of eating, and I wanted to see what would happen. And then I learned what would happen. I just wanted more. So then I thought, okay, maybe there is a lot to say about what's in this book, because it was certainly true for me. I just wanted more, and then I wanted to eat more food. I had a lot more food-seeking behaviors. So wheat was out for me, and flours and sugars continued to be out. But the more that I experimented, the low self-belief that I had converted into higher self-efficacy. And I did rely on courage and commitment to just keep going and just keep seeing my way through until the end. Well, actually there is no end, because there's not really a true destiny if we never get it done, right? So save that conversation for a little bit later. But I also think that exercise, movement, body bliss is the spice of life. And I think that it is so important to move your body, to tax your muscles, to, maybe I'm not crazy about the term doing hard things, but if you want to inspire confidence in yourself, there is a way to do that. And it is a lot of times doing hard things. And it's not always easy when you didn't participate in a lot of exercise and sports when you were growing up. I didn't. It wasn't a focus. And so my brain never got the message that it was something was important. And so I had to train myself to incorporate physical activity and try to link up in my brain things that felt good, links that I actually never had. And so in my 30s, I fell in love with racquetball, and I fell in love with Turbo Jam. And even with racquetball, there were times where I literally felt and probably looked like a freight train barreling down the court to chase after the ball as I was obese. I just kept doing it, and I kept linking up how good it felt. And it kept taking me back to the court, and it kept taking me to Turbo Jam. Shout out to Beachbody and Shailene Johnson. I love Shailene. Do you love Shailene? And I would say that the ketogenic diet actually helped me do more of that once I was adapted, of course. And then I added weightlifting onto that because I wanted to try to mitigate a lot of the muscle loss, because anytime you diet down, if you can use weights to kind of counteract that, then you're going to be in a better spot. For even more accountability, I had a Fitbit and now a Garmin watch. And then I love to track progress in the app. It's not that it's perfect, but data is power. Knowledge is power, but data is power. And being able to look at trends, whether you note something on a chart in a physical way, or you're looking at data like in like a progress app, it's really motivational to be able to look and say, oh, I'm still on the path, I'm still doing this. And it increases your confidence, motivation, your self-belief, your self-efficacy, your belief in self that you can continue to do it. You can continue to get to where you want and then some, and set new goals. So important. I would say that you don't have to do racquetball, Turbo Jam, Turbo Fire, which is, HIIT training. You can walk. I want to say that I will fall in love with walking one day, but in my brain, I've already linked up these other tougher types of workouts as to feeling good. And there's a lot of research on walking, and start there. It's really all you need to do. You don't have to do Turbo Jam. You don't have to do Turbo Fire. You don't even have to get on a court and do anything but walk. It's so good for meditative practice. It's so good just for calming your brain. It's so great for communing with nature and just being in the state of moving. It is the spice of life, and it's low impact. Anyone can do it, and you can start slow and then move on from there. So what were my challenges? I would say that I didn't know how to cook. And I really didn't know how to cook good food. And as a consequence of that, I often said, I don't like to cook. I said, I don't like to cook. The truth was, I didn't know how to cook. I know how to make a mean steak now, but I didn't know how to do that years ago. I would say that it was something that I've really had to hone in, challenge, watch a lot of YouTube videos. Shout out to my YouTube people that watch cooking videos online to perfect their steak making, their steak grilling skills. I also learned how to cook my favorite foods, replace my favorite foods, find new recipes for my favorite foods, create a new identity around what health was, because my identity was around eating fast food, donuts, brownies, everything in a box or a bag. And it was really important to realize that my definition of health was creating my challenges as well. I knew that I needed to be in a caloric deficit because I had read a long time ago, Tom Benito's Burn the Fat, Feed the Muscle. And even though I hadn't mastered it because I didn't have a lot of mindset pieces in line, and I knew how to track caloric energy, but I didn't really fully implement the zigzag pieces of it. I didn't really take into account how metabolic function played a role in it. I didn't take into account weightlifting to mitigate, muscle loss and all of that. So I understood caloric energy in the sense of food, but I didn't really know what good nutrition was. And I think that that's such a vague characterization and a vague term, good nutrition. But let's just say for now that I just needed to move away from the super processed foods, the fat-free nonsense and all of that, and get into whole food, single ingredient foods, and really understand how my physiology would respond to those foods. Here's the thing. I was willing to learn all of it. I was willing to adapt, move forward, be in the moment, be open, be curious. And I think that that is part of what helped me really supersede my challenges and just keep moving forward. I was asked this question actually yesterday as to how did I remain committed? How did I remain focused on what I wanted to achieve? And it wasn't like a goal weight. Like my goal has never been to be ripped and shredded and have a six-pack abs and weigh 105 pounds. No, that was not my goal. But as you can see here where I started when I was in 2014, here more or less I had lost about 53 pounds by the time I had hit December. And then for this photograph here in August of 2015, I had lost between 83 and 85 pounds. So that's roughly a little bit more than a year later. So if you're thinking, how long is it going to take? Maybe it just depends on a lot of things. This was my journey. This was how long it actually took me. And I was doing the weightlifting. I was doing not every day for months and months and months on end. It's not like I didn't have breaks. And I think the breaks were good. But this was just my journey and how it ended up working out for me. Yours could be faster, yours could be slower, yours could be pretty much any the way you want. Just remember always that physiology is always going to play a key role. Metabolism, type of food you eat, all of those are all really important components. But in terms of commitment, I made some decisions. I wasn't going back. I wasn't going back to eating the foods that I had eaten before. I decided that many foods would never be a part of my future foods or snacks. They would not be a part of my food plan. Refined sugar, flour, wheat would not be a part of my food plan ever. Strictly just thinking about nutrition, like what was it bringing me that made me feel good? So it was kind of easy to make the decision and stick to it and not look back. The other pieces that really helped me remain committed was I tracked my food and I tracked my energy intake. And I didn't feel like I could do that by eating out in restaurants, because how am I supposed to quantify things that I eat outside in a restaurant? I'm not saying that you should give up going to restaurants, but for me, it was just like I felt that until I understood my body, it was something that I was willing to do. I would go out occasionally, and because you can't be in a deficit all the time, you need to eat at a even maybe at a surplus occasionally. So that was what I used that for. But I would say too that part of that journey was getting to the place where I cared more about what I thought about my own weight loss journey and what I was eating versus what anyone else had to say about anything. It really didn't matter to me what anyone thought about my journey, about my decisions, about my food, whether or not I ate meat, didn't eat meat, ate veggies, didn't, how much fat, it didn't matter to me. One final note here was that I was willing to experiment. I was willing to experiment. I was willing to be curious. I was willing to implement whatever I needed to implement to an extent. I mean, baby steps, because you can't make all the changes all at the same time, because your brain will probably rebel. I mean, not probably, it will. So it was just being willing to experiment and seeing where those pieces were and what I was going to do. Things that worked for me were basically understanding the difference between diet and lifestyle. A diet, a lot of us saw, was something that you go on and off of. A lifestyle is something that you are willing to do and change, that you can incorporate for the long haul, and things that you're able to modify and be curious about. I mean, we're curious about lots of things, right? So why not be curious about food? Why not be curious about health? And that is a piece of just the lifestyle. Finding a food way or a diet that I could live with was one tip or trick that I think that I could recommend, and knowing that I could always modify it later, and it would be the exact same thing that I would recommend for you. Like, wherever you want to start small and start slow, and then just look at it from there. You won't be ready to implement everything, and I don't think that you should, but I think that you could go and take those small steps and then implement other things. Take something away, implement something, change something, find a different recipe. You know, if you like what you're eating, it will be a lot easier. Trust me, if you don't like what you're eating, you will dread every part of it. And then what's the point of that? So learning how to cook delicious but simple meals. I think keeping things simple too is kind of like a big deal, because we all work. We all have places that we need to go, things that we have to do. And so nobody wants to be spending time over a stove, day in and day out. So keeping things simple and keeping your meals to 10 or 15 minutes of preparation and cook time, I'm all about it. There's no reason to spend hours, prepping for that, unless you just really love that. And that's okay too. I would also say another tip and trick would be being able to plan ahead for events, outings, work. If I'm going to go to an event, getting into the mindset of, do I need to eat before that? Is there going to be food there that I'm going to want to eat? If there's not going to be food there, getting my mindset around that and saying, okay, well, maybe there's not food there that I want to eat, but if there aren't things, then what would be the best choices for me? And so really empowering myself before I go somewhere, thinking, you know what, if there's not something there that I would actually eat, just making the best choice that I can and giving myself grace and space for that. I think that was really important for me. And another big one would just be replacing food rewards and celebrations with other things. I mean, I was guilty in the past of maybe celebrating something and saying, oh, I'm going to go out to eat, or I'm going to have a big, slice of cheesecake at the Cheesecake Factory. And no shade on the Cheesecake Factory, but you can taste the flour in it. They've probably got a lot more options now than they did then, because they're probably a lot more cognizant of what people are, contemplating or thinking about with their health. And so I think that a lot of those decisions that I made that incorporated food reinforced, a lot of food issues that I had over the years. And then maybe I would, for lack of a better term, fall off the wagon for maybe a week, because, those old habits kind of sort of die hard. And it's not easy, if you've been doing something for decades, you don't just undo those just in a series of weeks or months. You could be working towards that on a regular basis until you get there, or until it gets easier. The other thing that I will say is taking progress pictures. I get it. Like, nobody wants to take pictures. If my friend had not forced me to take the picture that you see here on the left that says July 2014, I might not have taken that picture. I'm glad that I did. It's one of the few pictures that I actually have. And I'm glad I was willing to kind of chronicle my journey a little bit, because I could see like where I was and like the different months, here in January 2015 and then May 2015. And that really kind of says, oh, I was consistently on the journey and I was consistently doing a thing. And I'm really proud of like the work that I was doing. Creating a food plan and for the day, you can go into MyFitnessPal and you can map out kind of the things that you want to eat for breakfast and lunch, as opposed to backtracking and saying, well, I ate this. A lot of times it's a better way to having your food ready to go, having your food already pre-planned, pre-packaged, pre-wrote out, like, pre-logged, I guess, as you would say, like for the app, and then being able to follow it kind of would make it a lot easier. And I've used that many, many, many times because it's a lot easier to follow. And then understanding the difference between caloric restriction, something that's necessary to reach a goal, versus restricting myself with the thoughts of I can't have. Because let me just tell you something. When you say to yourself, I can't have that brownie, or I can't have X, Y, and Z. Sure you can. You can have it. Might not be the best choice. Make no mistake, it's always a choice. But you can have it. You might not feel well after it. But it doesn't exist in this world to say that I can't have the brownie or the cheesecake or the slice of pizza. No, you can. What you can say is you reframe your thoughts of, is there a better option? Or am I going to feel amazing after I eat this thing that I'm thinking about eating? And recreating your identity like around that. Like, who do you want to be going forward? This is who you were, the donut, brownie, cheesecake, ultra processed food gal. But who did I want to become? And how did I need to think as I was getting there? Meditation was like tranquility for my soul. And some people call it prayer. That's okay too. Prayer is a beautiful thing. Meditation for me was finding that place of quiet, finding that place where I can listen to music, whether it was guided meditation, where it was some of my favorite teachers. There's all kinds of ways to meditate. Communing with nature. You can do it while you're walking. It's not just about what a lot of us think with meditation, of someone sitting in a cave with their legs crossed and just, blissing out. That could be. It is. But that's not what it has to mean for you. I think focusing also on health and longevity, like now and for the future, looking at what nutrition actually supports the way that I want to feel, what movement for my body supports the way that I want to feel now and the way that I want to feel in 10, 20, 30, 40 years is really important. And so keeping that focus there and reframing all of those thoughts, also really important. This last one, being my own best friend, even when I fell off the wagon, like not beating myself up for things and just making sure that I'm saying the same things to myself that I would say to someone else. Just kindness and being compassionate towards self just really goes a long way. Probably the most important one on this whole list. Also say too that if you want to reward for consistency, and I think that you should, that you should find small ways to reward yourself that don't involve food. Like I mentioned this a little bit earlier. You can, whatever motivates you, whatever inspires you, small gifts to yourself, but you can do things like pick dates on a calendar to reward yourself for consistency, not pounds lost, not a weight on the scale. Because what happens if you get to a weight on the scale, and then like a couple of days later, it goes back up. Then now you're back to beating yourself up for something that did happen. And now you're thinking, oh, I don't really understand the physiology here. What's going on? Just pick dates on a calendar and do reward yourself. Motivate yourself by hitting the milestones, choosing milestones that make sense, and motivating yourself by the dates on the calendar and starting small. And then you can increase the reward value as the time goes on and as you see fit, and that fits on your budget and what sounds fun and all of those other elements that you want to incorporate. If you want to reinforce the journey, self-compassion, self-care, like here is just a really short list of things that I think are just beautiful ways to do it, like, bubble bath with candles or essential oils and music that you love, a new hair tool. Like, who doesn't like that? Some new, magnetic eyelashes. I love me some eyelashes. I don't have any on now, but, it's fun to play around with those things. And it's just small little gifts to myself that I've done like over like the last several years. Who doesn't like a beautiful new top to celebrate a milestone, or a beautiful new pair of pants that are flattering, a new skirt, like whatever is your thing, something that makes you feel amazing because you want to stand in that mirror and you want to look at yourself and say those things to yourself. Because sometimes it is just you, and you want to make sure that at least you are in your own corner. And you have to say those things to yourself. One of the things that I actually love to do, and I did this as a child, and I found it just to be so cathartic and meditative, was coloring. And a lot of people have other creative hobbies like writing or drawing or painting, puzzles. For me, it was like creating these little puzzles that you could color, like color puzzles, like in Canva, for example, and putting little sayings on them and just having fun with that with the colors. Other things are like self-care sessions, like getting a blowout, getting a hair makeover, because who doesn't love that? Getting a professional massage, because wow, don't the muscles just need that sometimes? Fun subscription boxes. I mean, there's so many different things that have like makeup, skincare that would all love to have your business, and they would just be so much fun. And what a fun reward to reinforce your journey and your commitment to yourself. Okay, so I got to talk about this last one. So fitness gear investment, new sneakers, new shoes. Seriously, yes. Because you don't want to be walking in the old shoes. You don't want to be hurting yourself, trying to, do a couple of laps around the neighborhood. Get yourself some good shoes. They have so many fun colors now that are so supportive. I mean, technology has really come a long way. And there's also fun workout clothes too that are just really flattering on the body as well. There's just no reason to not have some of these things. It's motivational and functional at the same time. Now, if I could just leave you with some final thoughts, what I would say to you is that the journey is continuous. Your pace is your power, and it's okay to go slow. And maybe it's better to go slow. Don't try to incorporate everything at one time, but just keep moving. You have the freedom to pivot, adapt, redefine your goals at any time. And it's all your choice. You can collect data, you can collect others' opinions, but at the end of the day, it's still your choice. Self-love and self-compassion are probably your most valuable tools. We talked about being your own best friend. Be that for yourself. The same things you would say to your friend. And hopefully you say nice things to your friend. Say those things to yourself in the most loving, self-compassionate way. And remember that the journey is just as much about rediscovering joy as it is about reaching your goals. And celebrate every milestone. Doesn't matter how big or small it is. Celebrate every size. Celebrate the things you put on your calendar. Sit down and think about it, because all of those milestones matter. Everything that you decide matters. Make it matter and make it count. My 3 final secrets are these, because they work for me. Be curious. Be curious about the journey. Be curious about food. Be curious about the what ifs. Be curious about what happens if you do this What happens if you don't do that? What happens if you eliminate this, incorporate that? What happens if you have fun with it? What happens if you start to feel a little bit of joy? What happens if you celebrate? What happens if you have fun? Don't be afraid to try the new things. Don't be afraid to try the new things. Always ask what if. Don't forget to have the fun. I think that that's one of the things that's actually missing, and that's why we end up dreading the weight loss. Take it slow, break it down, increments. Got a lot of weight to lose, you got 100 pounds to lose like I had to lose. Break it down. Don't look at the overarching thing of, oh my gosh, I have 100 pounds to lose. 10 pounds at a time. Celebrate the milestone. Whatever milestones they are that you create. Always have fun. Always look for the joy. Always find the ways at the end of the day to celebrate something that you did, that you maybe were thinking that you weren't going to get through and do. Because there's always something. I'm still on my journey. The journey's ongoing, remember? I have new goals. Just like you will have new goals. You will set some goals, you will change your goals, you'll modify your goals, you will have new goals. Beautiful. I also continue to experiment and find what works for me. There are some things that I thought I would never eliminate, like cheese. I thought, just shoot me now if I have to eliminate cheese, like there's no more reason. But I'm still on a journey too. So I continue to experiment and I love it. I still ask what if. I still ask what if almost on a daily basis, because I find that when something no longer works, or if I'm curious about something that I need to change, then I start gathering data and information and I start getting into the mindset, everything that I've talked about here. How do I change it? How do I incorporate it? How do I become the friend to myself? How do I continue to demonstrate and show myself compassion? Now in this presentation, I really hope that something resonated with you. I hope that you are now at this point in your thinking, I think I could do this. If she did it, I think I can do it, because in the end, my goal is to really share my knowledge. It's really to share the things that helped me. Hopefully, some of them will help you too. If there are things that I didn't cover, things that you're thinking, wow, she didn't talk about that, and I really thought she would, drop me a comment below and say, hey, I really thought, that you would have covered this thing, this area. And I'm happy to ponder it and see where I can make a difference for you, because at the end of the day, we're all in this together and we could all make a difference for each other if we just know that we have each other cheering on the sidelines, even though it feels like it's silent. Believe me, in my voice, I am really rooting for you because I know you can do it. It is a journey. It's okay that it's a journey, but I know you got this. If you need anything at all, any questions about anything that I said, any more ideas, hit me up here, drop me a comment and I'll answer. All right, I hope you have an amazing day wherever you are in this world, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.